Welcome back, everybody.
Hi.
I'm Jamie.
I'm Justina.
And this is Just So You Know.
We were just talking a lot of shit right now, but now we're back for you guys and gals.
We're here to talk shit
everyone.
with you guys.
Yeah.
So how the hell are you, baby?
I'm good now. I was literally falling asleep on the train. I was like, and then now I'm like awake and alive now that I saw your face. And I hear your voice and feel your energy.
You give me life as well.
You give me life.
You are my best friend.
You are my sunshine.
So guys, this episode, Justina and I are going to reach deep into the depths of our pockets, and we are going to talk about how veganism is not as expensive as people make it out to be.
Yeah, I think this is a really good episode because this is like the main fight, one of the main fights why people are like, oh, well, vegan is expensive. I can't go vegan because it's really expensive. And I am excited for this episode because I want to share this to my family and to my friends because it can be expensive. Like I find myself being like, what the heck? You know, but the world is expensive, so it's kind of hard for me sometimes to be like, is it the world or is it veganism?
Or is it government subsidies?
That's what I'm saying.
We will find out. But before we get there, I wanted to just introduce or preface that we will have an amazing guest coming on. Yes. Rochelle Owen. She has been with PETA for over 15 years, and she's going to share her experience growing up in a food desert and having to figure out ways to eat on food stamps being a vegan.
Food desert?
Yeah.
She's living in the desert.
She's not in the Sahara.
She's living in the dirt. She's surviving off of cacti.
Not exactly.
Okay.
Okay, so the definition of a food desert is an area that has limited access to affordable and nutritious food. So an example of that would be where you see fast food restaurants in the area or grocery stores that don't have fresh produce.
Right.
So the easiest thing for them to buy would be an animal product.
Rotisserie chicken. Whatever it's called. Yeah.
Or, you know, some of these people living in a food desert might not have access to a car, so they have to take a bus to get to one supermarket, and the closest supermarket is not offering plant-based foods that are either affordable or they simply don't have it. Yeah. So that's what a food desert is. So my first fact about what I know about food, the food system, prices would be that food deserts do exist.
They do.
And it can make it very difficult for people to access healthy and affordable plant-based food.
I kind of want to say that my neighborhood growing up was a food desert because I would even go to like the grocery store where they had fresh produce. And I would get so pissed off because I'm like, this shit is moldy and this is moldy. And then I would have like a moment of like, oh no, like nobody has like healthy produce. And like, I don't know, the Latinos where they're like, oh, it's okay. You just cut this part off and it's good. And I'm like, no.
Yuck.
No, it's moldy in one spot. The whole thing is done.
Yeah, these food deserts are a real problem, but I think also when we look at some of the excuses that non-vegans have, they'll say, well, there's people that live in food deserts that don't have access to healthy food, and therefore I can't go vegan. And I'm like, well,
that has nothing to do with you.
I said, honey, you're living on Park Avenue. You got a Rolex watch. Why are you using other people's situations as an excuse to continue hurting animals?
Exactly. I mean, unless you're going through it, shut the front door.
But what we are going to talk about today in this episode is there are ways to be vegan that are budget friendly, to eat a vegan diet that's budget friendly. And so hopefully after listening to this will help people that might be in a situation where they don't have the money to splurge on fancy vegan restaurants. And I just watched They're Trying to Kill Us, which is an amazing documentary that everybody should check out. And it does go into the statistics of how people of color and minorities are affected by animal products.
I know.
And they talk about food deserts, and they really cover so many different subject matters regarding the food system and just how unjust it is. And I learned a lot from that. So if people are looking for like hardcore statistics to get really deep into this, watch They're Trying to Kill Us.
Oh no, that movie's probably gonna piss me off. I was watching a show and all you see is like chicken wings, and
Ugh.
pizza, and beer. And I'm like, and then all of a sudden they show all these medications right after. And I'm like, they're like, eat this, and then you'll take this medication later because you're going to get sick from it. And it's so freaking frustrating, but they brainwash you. You know, you're like, ooh, yeah, that looks good. You know, and it makes me think about when I was a kid. I used to freak out every time I saw like a pizza ad or like a chicken wing ad. I used to be like, I want to eat that. Like, not me, little me not knowing what was happening. You know, I was taking the bait. I was taking the bait.
They do make it look yummy, and I think one of the comebacks that a lot of meat eaters have is they'll say, "Why do you vegans make your food look like our food and make it look like meat?" And I'm like, your food doesn't look anything like the animal it once came from. I'm like, why do you cut your sausage like cucumbers, huh?
I saw that. I was like, whoa, that's a good one.
And also, just so you know, that's our podcast. These food commercials use like tampons to like create smoke. Like they'll put a tampon in the microwave and then they your face. Your fucking face. They'll put a tampon in the microwave and then like I guess they'll put it in there until it heats up so that it won't explode or anything. And then they'll put it inside the burger, inside the fries.
A tampon?
It's not a used tampon.
No, I'm just kind of like trying to follow where you're going with this and why the heck they use tampons. That's very specific.
They use it to create smoke, to make it look appetizing and appealing. So the food that's shown in these like chicken wing commercials, or it's not edible.
Right.
They'll use glue or gasoline.
It's
and
fake.
It's fake. It's
with tampons in them.
Theatrical.
It's so weird.
Okay, kind of adding on to that, being that they're liars, the U.S. government spends around $38 billion in tax money to subsidize the meat, dairy, and egg industries.
Listen, I just finished my taxes, and every time you bring up the fact that our taxes go to things like that, I get so angry. I just want to be like, throw the mic and be like, we're going, I don't know where, but where we're supposed to go to talk about what the fuck they're doing with their tax dollars.
How is that fair?
It's not fair. We should be able to vote on what we want our tax dollars to go to.
So this is exactly why you see a burger on the dollar menu and a salad that's, $10.
I know. It's so fucked up.
Less than 4% of that $38 billion in subsidies that they give are given to fruits and vegetables.
Why?
I got to give a lot of credit to this organization called Agriculture Fairness Alliance, AFA, and Connie Spence, who's been studying this stuff and who I've learned a lot of these statistics from. Yeah, she goes into Capitol Hill and into Congress and she speaks with lobbyists to reallocate where some of this money is going so that, you know what, like at the very least, let's just reallocate the money so that healthy food is accessible and affordable for all.
Let people make an actual choice and not be forced in one direction or the other.
Yeah. Meat and dairy, it's extremely artificially low. Those prices, if you were to actually get a burger and pay the real cost of it, it would probably be upwards of at least $40.
That's crazy.
At least.
I feel like people don't know that. I definitely didn't know that. I mean, I usually question things that are super cheap. I'm like, why is that super cheap? I don't want to eat that. I'm like, oh, that sounds like you found it on... Oh.
Sounds like there's a tampon in there. Not eating that.
That's funny.
We have our guest coming on next. Yay. I want to introduce her to all of you. Rochelle Owen. She is the Senior Director of PETA 2, which is the youth division.
Oh, I love PETA 2.
Yeah, she's going to tell us a little bit more about PETA 2, but they do a great job at reaching teens and college students. And so, yeah, let's have Rochelle join us. Yeah. Ready?
Well, let me tell you a story about myself. So I was born and raised in inner city Detroit. I was an only child, and my dad was from an immigrant family, and both my parents had, their own challenges in life before I got there. And we didn't have a lot of money. We were super low income. I grew up going to food banks and using food stamps and dealing with, being in that kind of environment. And I'm mixed race. I grew up in a predominantly Black community, and my mom was white. So growing up, there was a big sense of her wanting to instill in me a passion for social justice from a very young age. She had been someone who marched for women's rights and against racism and against war. And so she was very passionate about teaching me about equality.
Right.
So I'm so lucky for that.
Aww.
And in addition to that, I feel fortunate, which I don't know that a lot of people would say, but I was lucky to go to Detroit Public Schools. And in Detroit Public Schools, civil rights and Black history and social justice, it was a huge part of our curriculum, and more so than even like science was. So, and a lot of people can't say that, a lot of people never learn that. So like, I look back and I'm so thankful to have that experience growing up. And so here and there, it started to intersect with animals. Like in our neighborhood, there's a lot of dog fighting. People had their dogs chained up. And I remember my mom like running out of the house and confronting people who were literally taking a dog and slamming him into a trunk and shutting the door and driving off. And when she called the police, she called animal control. She was out there, and she told me, when you see something that's wrong, you have to speak up.
Yes,
and so,
Mom.
I love her.
Yes,
Mom.
so it was my mom and also my dog Token. So we grew up. He was like my brother. He was, my best friend as an only child. And I remember being like 5 or 6 and looking at him and being like, there's a person in here.
Yeah.
Like I just remember having this wave of realization, like, okay, when he has to go to the bathroom, I let him out. When he needs to eat, I have to give him the food. When he needs water, which is like a basic necessity, it's up to me to make sure he has that. So, but again, not a bigger context yet on that feeling. But then I went to high school, of course, and this applies to both of you as well, because I got assigned a newspaper article to write about PETA's runway takeovers. And this one was Victoria's Secret and Giselle, like a million years ago.
Yes.
But I had never heard of PETA. So I think of all the young people inspired by you all nowadays who are like researching at night. And so I did all this research on the fur industry, and I saw animals being skinned alive. And I said, okay, well, I don't like fur. I would never wear fur. So I'm anti-fur. Of course, then I came upon Meet Your Meat. And that's when like something shifted for me.
Yeah.
I thought, I'm an animal lover. I would never hurt animals. And yet every time I'm going to Burger King down the street, which was like my main food, or, getting that pepperoni pizza, I'm literally funding this.
Right.
It was just an immediate connection to me. But something else was clear to me at that point too. That was all the things I'd learned about social justice and all the things I'd learned about speaking up for others and doing what was right. This applied here. Like, this is the same. And so from then on out, it was never a choice to me. No matter how hard it got, it was no more a choice to be eating animals than it was to be anti-racist or to be anti-homophobic. It's like, I wasn't going to say, okay, it's a little inconvenient for me today, so forget that.
Right.
It just wasn't a choice. So, I started to explore plant-based foods a little bit and using my mom's EBT card to go out and buy meatless meals. And well, shortly after that, my dad passed away of a heart attack at 44, massive heart attack, so young, directly related to all the food we were eating. I mean, like I said, Burger King, he ate it twice a day. I mean, that was on the corner. That was what he ate. And my mom and I lost our house and we moved into a really run down trailer park where we didn't have water sometimes. We didn't have heat. And still, I was like, okay, this is a moral obligation for me. It's not an option for me to just go back to doing what I was doing. So, we didn't have a car. So just like what y'all were talking about earlier, we went to a liquor store that had like a food section. And I ate so many canned potatoes. Like I'd look at a canned potato and I'm like, okay, like in the grocery store, it's like too much. Although sometimes I'm like, that sounds good. Like,
and so was your mother supportive at this time? Was she on board with you being plant-based and vegan?
Oh yeah. I think she was kind of like, I created a monster.
She was like, dang it.
Yes, exactly. She was like, okay, you know what? But then when I got a job at PETA later on, you know, she put like a sign in the yard and was like, my daughter works at PETA. So she was really happy about that. But yeah, I just made it work. And when I got a little bit older, I started working for, you know, a corporate coffee chain that underpays their employees and overcharges for non-dairy milk.
Me too, girl. Me too.
Me too. And I felt like more poor than I'd ever been. I mean, like, I was like, how am I going to eat? And one of my coworkers was Indian. And she was like, you know what? Let's go to the Indian grocery store. Let's get stuff to make. I'm going to teach you. She literally had me come to her house and we cooked chana masala and aloo gobi. And she taught me the ways.
That's so great.
Yes, it was amazing. And that's another thing about, you know, this discussion. There's so many cultures out there. You know, I'm Middle Eastern, and so many cultures that are brown, Black cultures that are out there with this amazing food that's vegan or can be vegan very easily. And so, you know, I think that's an important part of this discussion. And eventually I decided just being vegan myself wasn't enough. So I wanted to do more. And so that's how I came to be at PETA.
Wow. That's amazing.
It's really inspiring because somebody that was facing her own challenges, you are a perfect example of how you're still able to extend your compassion.
Right.
It's like you made it work despite the odds that might have been against you at the time.
Right. And you learned, you know, that I'm so sorry about your father, but my sister has a similar story. My stepfather died around the same time, same age, I mean, and he was not healthy. He was always pushing that barbecuing, grilling out, steaks. And I low-key, when I was younger, I bonded with him about food and that stuff. But he ended up dying. And that's amazing that you were able to make that connection and go, you know what, let my father's death not be in vain and let me grow and learn from it and take charge.
I really, you know, I think that it's unfortunate that people categorize vegan food into one category because as you were saying, there's so many different cultures that have plant-based items.
Right.
There's so many different kinds of meals you can make. It's not one way of eating, and that's why I want to make it super clear that veganism is not a diet.
Yeah.
It is a moral and ethical stance.
Exactly.
And what you eat, what one vegan eats is going to be completely different from what another vegan eats.
100%.
And so I guess it kind of leads into the next question, which is veganism privileged?
Yeah, I mean, there are so many serious issues of inequality and environmental racism and privilege. And we could talk about it for hours, but personally, I mean, I find it really dismissive, and I find it, frankly, it pisses me off when I see this kind of, you know, people commenting with just this blanket, okay, well, it's privileged, or you know, it's too expensive.
It's a white thing.
Yes, I think it really like dismisses all the people of color and low income people out there doing the work. And why shouldn't we be doing more work to reach these people? These, you know, people in low income communities, brown people, Black people, who are given nothing, who are given no resources. Why shouldn't we be talking to them about the risks they're facing when they're facing some of the most dire, and they have higher rates of cancer, heart disease, stroke, related to the lack of resources? And it's by design that way.
Right.
Well, I want to provide people with actual tasks and actions that they can take after listening to this episode if they're in a similar situation. So first, my first question would be, what changes would you like to see implemented in these communities to make plant-based food more accessible for all?
Yeah, I mean, of course, you all touched on subsidies. That would change the world if there were not subsidies for these industries. it would revolutionize everything. It would change the world for us and change the world for animals and this planet. And the government could snap their fingers and make a big difference. But the reality of it is we know that's going to require a whole cultural shift.
Crazy.
And I think that is where each and every one of us in our personal choices comes into play. And so I think the biggest change I want to see personally is every single individual person realizing our power as consumers and taking action and looking into our community to get involved instead of, just commenting or writing being vegan off.
Right.
Do something. Do something. If you don't like the system, do something about it in any way that you personally can. There are amazing organizations out there in Detroit. We have several that are, urban farming initiatives run by, Black and brown people in their communities. In Tulsa, there's Food on the Move that does a lot of pay as you can and free drive up services. And Los Angeles has Support and Feed, which is incredible, doing incredible work. And I know, Jamie, you mentioned they're trying to kill us earlier. People can do screenings in their local community about this issue. You can do food demonstrations. I used to do those in LA for PETA, and there's no better way to win people over than with delicious vegan food. So donating vegan food to food banks. I mean, I think in my mind, the biggest thing that people can do is get involved and make a difference to change it and use their power to do something.
Right. I mean, you're saying all of those things. I'm like, yeah. But I'm like, but I didn't even know about all those things.
What are some resources that helped you personally along the way?
Well, I think there are, several, but I do want to touch on, I think you're totally right. The privilege of educating yourself. I think it's so important. Just like you're getting involved with anything in life, you're going to have to look into it a bit and figure out what's going to work best for you and what resources exist in your community. And I think to your point, this is an institution that's made this way by design and it's systemic. And, they don't want us to do the Googling to figure out how to, the issues with animal agriculture or eating food or the risks that we have by eating animals. So I think that's a really important part that we do have to break out and try to see this as a social justice issue, just like we would anything else, and educate ourselves on it. Because something I always think about with this topic is I feel like it's so easy to feel like we have no control over something in our life. And sometimes we don't. There's lots of things we don't have control over. But I think every single human being is in a position of privilege when it comes to how we treat animals. And so we really have a obligation to do the work, to try. No one's perfect. I'm surely not, but to try and not just, write it off as nothing. So I wanted to say that too, so I think that's really important.
So well said. And before you touch on the next part about resources, I just want to say that you're absolutely right. This is something where we shouldn't be taking baby steps, because if we compared it to any other social justice issue, you wouldn't say oh yeah, let me just accept some gay people, or oh yeah, okay, sometimes it's okay to be racist. You wouldn't say that. So it's why is it okay sometimes to literally pay to have an animal violently killed?
Totally right. And as far as resources go, I thought a lot about this. I feel like, just to kind of harp on this a little bit, I think one of the biggest resources you have is yourself and your experiences, good and bad, in life. I've thought a lot about this and my story and my trauma and what it was going to do to me. What did my life represent? What did I want to do with the time I had? And so I wanted to work to lessen fear and trauma for others, including animals. And so I just really spent a lot of time educating and reflecting on what I could do as a person. Of course, finding PETA 2 when I was a teenager, it changed my life. I thought, okay, here are all these resources. I can do this, the other. I can go out and hand someone a leaflet and talk to them. I can intern at PETA. And so finding a community of like-minded people was hugely important. And PETA 2 is still here to help young people in any way. If you want to do a cooking demonstration at your local community center, if you want to figure out how to do a table at your college, if you want to hand out leaflets outside the grocery store just about healthy vegan options when people go in, we will help you every single step of the way. So I think that's really important. It's just to step outside, because I think it's easy to be overwhelmed and to think the world is doomed And you just have to be like, okay, you know what can I do? And my biggest resource was actually getting out there and doing something and thinking, okay, well, at least I'm trying.
Yeah.
Every single day I wake up and at least I give a damn and I'm trying to make the world a better place. And that really helped me.
So give us like a daily day of eating for you, maybe back then and now, that's budget friendly. Give people some options of meals that are healthy and that will satiate them.
Please. That's so important.
When I first went vegan, I lived near Dearborn, Michigan, which has the highest population of Middle Eastern people outside of the Middle East. And a lot of, Asian grocery stores, Indian grocery stores, and you can get like literally a huge tub of tofu that will last you like a normal person weeks. Me like a day.
So we're the same.
Yes. So tofu scrambles I really liked. It has tons of protein. And my favorite thing about it is that it really can't get old because you can always customize it with whatever kind of veggies you want. Like I said, more and more farmers markets are taking EBT cards and food stamps and food assistance. That's so hugely important. And if the one near you doesn't, start having that discussion to help people have better access to those foods. And so I love those. You can change it up and make it into a breakfast burrito. You can put it in tacos. You can put it on toast. You can mix in different spices and things. And speaking of the Indian grocery store, black salt will elevate your tofu scramble. It's so good. And it's going to be really affordable. You can prep it, for a week and make it in bulk. It's easy to store and take with you to work. I also survived on a lot of like stir fries, even frozen vegetables. I think they get a bad rap. I know, Justina, you were talking about smoothies and frozen fruit. Totally. It's still really great and healthy for you. And if you don't live near like Middle Eastern markets or Indian markets or Latina markets, you could try places like Aldi or Grocery Outlet is a really great one in California. Even the dollar store. I know when I was living in Los Angeles for several years, dollar stores had frozen veggies and fruits and things like that. I'm also a big fan of like beans, rice with like avocado if you want to splurge a little bit. Salsas, just kind of basic things like we were talking about earlier when you were going over, you can buy things like beans, rice, pasta, all in bulk. Great. And it's so funny when people say, I could never eat vegan. Vegan food is weird. It's like, I'm sure you've had pasta with marinara. It's like one of the most basic, cheap things. And they make really affordable, marinara in cans instead of the jars.
And also like
grocery stores.
Peanut butter and jelly, like kind of going off the classic meal. Peanut butter and jelly costs like 45 cents to make on average. And there's protein in there. It's yummy. It's like you don't have to eat that every single day or every single meal, but it's an option. It's an option. It's a lunch.
Yeah. It's a snack.
Yeah. It's something that people like, they're like, I could never have a vegan meal. It's like the second you tell them it's vegan, they're like, oh, I knew it tasted weird. I'm like, honey, you've been eating peanut butter and jellies your whole life.
It's so true. And another thing I really live off of nowadays is like overnight oats.
Overnight oats.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
Delicious.
Yes. You can add, things as you want to, nuts, fruits, if you are able to, but it's a really good base for breakfast and just snacks as well, and has a lot of nutritious benefits to it. I survived off a lot of couscous salad, fattoush salad, falafel.
Falafel.
Yes, and things that I had to maybe try for the first time. So branch out.
People are like so eager to eat like dismembered body parts, like eyeballs, buttholes, veins, and tendons, feet. And then like when you present them with like a homemade vegetable soup that's colorful, they're like, God, no! Yeah.
You're like,
I'm like, what the hell? I'm like, it's just plants.
It's so
true.
It's so true.
I'm so glad you guys agree with me.
You got some companions here.
Yes.
Well, Rochelle, this was absolutely so helpful. I mean, it's actually inspiring me to be more budget friendly because I'm like, all my money goes to just eating fancy food because I love food so much, and plant-based food is delicious.
It is.
But there's so many ways to do it cheap. So
yeah, exactly.
Yep, definitely.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing your story and telling us how you got involved. Hopefully it inspires other people as well.
Yes, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks.
Wow,
she just inspired the shit out of me. I was like, what am I doing? I could just stay home and host like a screening.
Yeah.
I really want to do that now. There's so many movies that I think if like, especially in my community, like in the Bronx, like if they knew there was like a free movie screening and like if I could organize like at least a snack, you know, like popcorn. Popcorn's not expensive. There you go. Another vegan snack, popcorn. A lot of movie theaters don't have it with butter, and some of them have it with vegetable butter. It's an easy snack, and it's filling, and it's fun.
Okay, we're definitely doing the movie screening.
We
that
have
has
to
to
do
happen
that.
because I think a lot of it starts with education, and it's this.
It definitely is. That's why when you were like, oh, the privilege thing, I'm like, it has to do with like not being able to afford it, but then people just don't know. I mean, I didn't know about veganism forever. I was an adult when I found out what veganism was.
Yeah, well, hopefully after this episode, they won't be able to use budget as an excuse.
Right.
So I guess they'll just have to hit us with their lions do it, or
Right.
they'll have to hit us with, the protein myth, and we're ready for you. I feel like I'm in a ping pong game sometimes. I'm like, all right, hit me with your next excuse. All right.
Exactly. My boyfriend's always like, oh my gosh, when we go with non-vegan people to dinner, he's like, try not to talk about it. I'm like, they want to talk about it.
Absolutely, I'm going to talk about
As soon
it.
as they see me, they're like, oh, so. And I'm like, bring it. What's your question? Like, you want to talk about it? Let's go, bro.
I'm ready for you. There's no logical argument against veganism, and that's why I love veganism so much.
Yeah.
One of the many reasons is because you're always right.
Yeah, exactly. You're like, I can't lose.
I just can't lose here. So
You're like, this is so much fun.
So the other two things I wanted to mention before we wrap up, because we've been going for a while, is that according to Oxford University, adopting a vegan diet could slash your food bill by up to 1/3. So if Oxford's saying it and we're saying it, it's like, how much more evidence do you need?
You think we want to pay more for that shit? We don't want to pay more. We get angry when we have to pay more for doing a nice, kind act.
Right, and sorry, I want to feel good and look good, and I don't have money to do that.
Yeah.
Like, what the fuck? Okay, now things are getting weird. We're gonna go, guys, but you know where to find us. I'm at It's Jamie's Corner.
I'm at Justina.
Take two.
I'm at Justina. Comment, share, like.
Go follow PETA.
Go follow PETA too.
And Just So You Know podcast.
Yeah.
And until next time, you know the drill. We'll be back.
back.
We'll be back. We'll be back.